Yo, what's going on, guys? Reversal here, and today I'm going to be doing a branded Chimera deck profile for the current format. I used to play this deck a while ago and stopped playing it for a bit since I was playing it like how a lot of people played it. Just like a basic Chimera engine with a small branded fusion package and a bunch of hand traps. But I found the deck didn't have enough pushes, it was too fragile into hand traps, and it was very linear, so I stopped playing it. But I picked it back up recently with a different approach. Instead of hand traps and like a basic combo engine, I'm playing a lot more gas and not main decking any hand traps, which I think is fine right now. In this deck, since I don't really want to play hand traps in this deck, since you're just not gonna be able to play hand trap wars with this deck like Snake Eyes does. In my opinion, it's kind of like how branded is, like the regular branded deck, but it plays differently, of course. But I think the core philosophy of how that deck kind of uses its non-engine, I think that works well in this deck as well. And this deck, you can fit that non-engine in a lot better. So I think it's the way to go for now and probably for the future. When we get a ban list, this deck could also get better just from when Snake Eyes does get nerfed, hopefully. And then this deck is also getting support in the future as well. So that could also help bolster it some. But yeah, before I get into the profile, if you're interested in this cloth playmat, comes in other colors as well. Check out Grimoire Accessories, and if you decide to buy anything, use code Reversal5 for 5% off. And if you've seen in my other videos, the Dino playmat, Dino sleeves, then they have like binders and stuff as well. Check out finalsaga.de for that side of things, and use code Reversal10 for 10% off over there. I'll leave links to both in the description. So yeah, how to get started. This deck is 43 cards, which I think is fine in this deck. You could cut it down as well a little bit if you want to, but I don't think it's really needed. So we got the 3 Sword Knight, 3 Cornfield, 3 Gazelle, 2 Baphomet, and 1 Master Tau for the Chimera monsters. And to round out the Chimera package, there's 3 Chimera Fusion. The Master Tau is something I wasn't playing the last time I played this deck, but I feel like it's good to play. I've seen a lot of people play it now. It's kind of become standard. This card can help you OTK and can open up some other additional lines, so I think it's fine to play. And then play 3 Chimera Fusion. You could potentially play 2, but I think 3 is fine, helps in the grind. If you see this with these, it can help you to play as well, since you have your 1 card combos over here, but this can help open up some 2 card combos. So I think 3 is fine. So now for the branded portion of the deck, we have 2 Albaz, 1 Aliber, 1 Cartesia, and 1 Hexio Fusion to go with the 3 branded fusion, 3 opening, and 2 deployments. Aliber is fine to go with the branded openings. I only played at 1. Some people played at 2 because you don't want to open these 2 together, since then you can't get the Aliber off the opening. But the way I see it, kind of with those type of engines, I'd rather just play the minimum than add an extra normal summon that's going to add to more bricky hands than to build my deck for a very low percentage hand, like opening these 2 together. So I just opt to play 1. You could play 2, but I think 1's fine. And then the deployments with the Cartesia is really nice to help give you just more ways to make fusions, and this can help you to dodge imperms and stuff as well. So I think it's definitely needed in the deck to help give you those additional pushes. You can even play 3 deployment as well, but I'm just playing 2 for now. And then the Hex Seal, this is for Dragoon. I think Dragoon's mandatory to me in this deck, since it's just a really nice card to have, since it's hard to out for a lot of decks. Giving you an Omni Negate is very nice. The discard, you have a lot of card economy built up with this deck, since you do get a lot of random +1s, so the discard is never really an issue for the most part. And then Dragoon's just a really nice card to help make your opponent have to respect your branded fusion more. So I think it's needed, but some people don't run it, but I think it's definitely one of the better cards to play in the deck. And then the final engine we have is just a small patchwork engine. 2 chain, 2 patchwork, 1 poly. The poly is similar to the Aliber in the sense that if you open these together, you can't use your patchwork since you do need a poly in deck, but similar philosophy. This isn't a card you really want to draw, so I'd rather just deal with it if that hand happens than have to open this in my hand and making my hands worse more often. So, but the patchwork engine's cool to just give you more gas, similar to how the list is just built in general. I think it's good to have as much gas as possible right now to play through all the hand traps. So for the non-engine stuff, playing 3 thrust, I need to pick up a 3rd one. And then the 1 fusion duplication to go with the thrust. I don't have this card somehow either, even though it's a common, so I have to pick that up as well, but talk about that more in a sec. Then we got the 3 talents and 3 droplets and the 1 called by. So I'll start off with the called by real quick. This isn't really necessary to play. It's like fine for Ash and Veilers, and then going second it can hit like Princess and stuff, but this card was a lot better when people were main decking Droll a lot, since Droll can be annoying with this version of Branded. So, but people have dropped Droll a lot from their main decks, and a lot of people aren't even siding it anymore, but I think Call By is just fine to play in general, but you could definitely cut this and just play 42. Droplet is, to me, one of the best like going second board breakers right now. I think it's just a reliable card since it can't be responded to, depending on what you send. Sometimes just using one of your spells that you already use just as a free send for this is fine if they don't have a monster card to negate it. But you do have a lot of other monsters that you can freely send with this, and some like Edge of Chain that you can even get value off sending. So I think Droplet's really nice as a card in general right now, and in this deck as well. I see a lot of people play Super Poly and Branded. Just kind of like, oh, fusion deck, you should play Super Poly, but in my opinion, Super Poly is not really a good card right now for the most part. I don't think it's really hitting boards as impactfully as it needs to right now to justify playing it. Because it is a card that discards, and we're already playing Branded Openings, Dragoon, which are other cards that discard, so I think Super Poly needs to be better than it is right now to warrant playing, and I just don't think it's worth it right now, personally. We got the 3 talents. Card you can search off thrust, but just seeing this card is really nice, especially when you're going first. You're playing all this extra gas to be able to play through the hand traps, so if they do hand trap you and you have all this gas to keep playing, and you get to rip another card from their hand that you get to look at their hand on top of it with this, you're just kind of, you get to see what they have so you can play accordingly. And then ripping a card and then getting another hand rip from the Chimera combos is just very strong in getting your opponent down in card advantage, so they just don't have much to play with when it comes to their turn, and then they just can't push through all your disruptions. So that leads me to the thrust package. I feel like this package right here is like the main thing that helps you kind of tie all this together with the board breaker approach and playing through hand trap approach. Since the thrust, when you go first, if you get hand trapped, you could just set the fusion duplication and copy a fusion spell in your graveyard, which is mainly going to be Branded Fusion, if you have access to it, which you do have a bunch of cards to get to Branded Fusion. So that's like the main interaction, similar to how you see like regular branded decks going towards this type of approach. I think it's definitely the right one to take. And this card can also copy other cards in your deck, like Polymerization or Chimera Fusion, but mostly it's for Branded Fusion. So being able to set this when you get hand trapped and then play on your opponent's turn is really nice. And then this card is just a lot better going second than something like Crossout, which you see some people playing Branded in the past, which like with Ash Blossom. But I think the thrust is just way better than Crossout. personally. So I think this package is very good. If you're taking a board breaker approach, especially, I think it's for sure mandatory. But I think it just helps you play through stuff a lot better than the other options, and that's the main goal of this deck, is to be able to play through hand traps and kind of out-resource your opponent. So that's it for the main deck. Another card I didn't really talk about was the House of Wax guy. I don't think this is worth playing either. It's okay, it's not like a bad card, but I just don't think it's worth the slot right now. So for the extra deck, we have Dragoon, 2 Guardian Chimera. You can get away with one of these, but I have the space for the second one, so I'm playing it. The 1 Chimera King, similar to the Guardian Chimera. Second one can come up sometimes, but I think this one, you're fine with one a lot more often than not. And then the other Chimera fusions, we have the Illusion Beast and the Baphomet fusion. This card's good for OTKs. This card's nice for dumping fiends and illusions and stuff that you can help do some things with in terms of combos, which something you can do in the side deck with this card is nice. There's a few options for that, which I'll go over. Then we got the 2 Albions, 1 Lubellion, 1 Rindrum, and 1 Mirror Jade for the branded stuff. You play 2 Albions since you do make this to go into the Hex Seal, and then you want another one to be able to send off the Mirror Jade. We got 1 Dracostapelia and 1 Magnum the Reliever. It's just more options for your Chimera fusions. Then to go with the fusion deployment package, we're playing the Grand Guignol. And then you have 2 options for a fusion to play to summon off this. You can play the Proskinian or the Quertus. I think both of these are pretty good in different situations. I think the Proskinian's probably a little bit better, but you just want to play one of these. This is 16 cards, so you don't have space for both anyway, but you just want to play one just so you have a target for this. Yeah, I think the Grand Guignol with the fusion deployment definitely helped this deck a lot. So that's it for the extra. So for the side deck, I'm going to have a lot more than 15 cards as usual. There's a different approaches you can take when it comes to the side deck, depending on your locals always. So definitely just keep that in mind for whatever is at your locals or whatever tournament you're planning to enter, and adjust accordingly. So I want to be playing some number of Bestials for sure. You could play like 3, you could play 5, and then I think Ash Blossom's important for like Labyrinth and Branded as well. I think these cards have a lot of overlap into some of the other matchups where the board breakers aren't as good, so I think you want some number of these, whether you play 5 Bestials or you go down to 3. I think you do want to be playing some combination of these, mainly for you do happen to play against Branded or Labyrinth, like I said. Other random decks, like the Bestials are really nice against Voiceless. And speaking of Voiceless, another card that's really good against Voiceless is Dark Ruler. This is just another form of like droplet to where you can side this in for the boards that are a lot of monster field-based negations and stuff, so it's good against like pure Snake Eyes. It's not as good against the Fire King version. Then we have Lightning Storms and Duster. These are more like just mass clears and thrust targets. You can either play these, or you can play like one of them just to have it as a search off thrust. And then you have Cosmics. The Cosmics are nice for like Runic and Fire King, and the Storms and stuff are nice for like Voiceless and some other decks. Just have like a bunch of back where like Flu can hit the monsters as well. Kashtira, like these cards really shine in those matchups. So you can play like either or of these. I don't think you have space to really play both, but it just kind of depends on your locals again. Like if you have a lot of Fire King and Runic and stuff, you want to play these. If not, you can play the Mass Clears. Then another thing you could play is Nibiru and Phantasme. The Nib's kind of just like a one of hand trap that's impactful enough that if you see this card by itself in some matchups, it can be enough. But a lot of the time, you're going to need to pair this with something, so I don't think it's really that good. But it's something that you can choose to side. And then the Phantasme is another thing you could choose to play. It giving you a body is nice for like the Chimera, the Guardian Chimera plays. And this can just help dig for your board breakers or nib if you're playing it. But this is a card that I haven't really played a ton in this deck, but I think in theory this could be good. So it's definitely something to consider using. And then finally, we have the going first cards, which I wouldn't play all of these, but these are some cards you can play that you can get access to off this fusion. I think the best one is the Dark Barrier statue for sure. This card can help shut down a lot of decks right now since we are in a fire-dominated meta for the most part. The Wangu is nice for the decks that have like the smaller attack stuff like Pearly, Sprite, which no one's really playing anymore, but it's, you know, it's good for decks like that. And then the End of Anubis is good for decks that have effects in the graveyard like Tearlaments and to an extent like Fire King. But you could just make this against that, so. Yeah, these are something that you definitely should play some number of, at least the Barrier statue. I don't like the other like Floodgate trap cards that much in this deck. You could play Summon Limit, but I don't think you have a reasonable way to really get rid of it all the time, so I don't really like Summon Limit in decks like that. Same thing with Anti-Spell. You could play it, but it could end up hurting you as well. Since this deck doesn't really lose to board breakers like that, I don't think you need to play like a Solemn Judgment either. Something you could play is Skill Drains, which sometimes just flipping a Skill Drain and then sitting on like a Dragoon or Guardian Chimera or something is enough, so that's something you could also consider, but I don't think you necessarily need to play a going first like Floodgate in this deck, so. But yeah, that's going to be it for the deck. Like I said, this deck's pretty solid, and I think it has potential to get even better in the future, so definitely give it a try if you have the cards. It's pretty cheap for the most part outside of the thrusts, which, I mean, hopefully this gets a reprint that actually does something to the price at some point, but till then, it kind of just is what it is. But yeah, that's it for the deck. Peace. Have a good one.